Hello, Richard. So excited to be here with you today. Today, we are recording our second book review, and this time around, we are discussing Trillion Dollar Coach by Eric Schmidt, Jonathan Rosenberg, and Alan Eagle, which talks about Bill Campbell. So I'm so excited to learn about this book. I know that this book is a hidden gem. So we'll get right into it with questions. But before I get started, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get into it so we don't keep our viewers waiting. So the first question that I have for you is, would you recommend this book to others? Why or why not?
I'd absolutely recommend the book. It's really an inspirational book. It's a key book that outlines how an individual, through a lot of his techniques and experience, was able to help a number of top business leaders from Google to Apple to Amazon. Each of the CEOs of those companies and others relied upon Bill Campbell's advice and techniques.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. This is insightful. So my next question that I have is, if you could describe the book in one word, what would it be?
I'd say inspirational. Inspirational in that most of us have been through a journey. Most of us reading a book have had at least maybe 10 years of business experience, some more, some 20, 30 years. And it's always nice to go in and pick up some nuggets and learn from something that really adds a new flavor that's very relevant to today, that's helped catapult as the leaders of these companies would say. Tim Cook talked about how great a mentor and a coach Bill Campbell was to Steve Jobs, and how important it was, and how important his advice continues to be for Apple and others in Silicon Valley.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And seeing that you mentioned Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs, why do you think Bill Campbell, or what did Bill Campbell do that was so special that people like Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs wanted to spend time with him and pick his brain and learn from him?
There's a lot of factors. It really relates to a common word of trust. They felt that they could trust Bill Campbell. They had a history with him. When it really got tough, Bill Campbell was there at a critical point, in particular in 1997, when Steve Jobs returned to CEO after Apple had purchased his prior company Next, and he rejoined the company. The company was facing some bankruptcy, so a lot of heavy lifting, and he really needed somebody that he could work with, that he thought not only he could trust, but somebody that could help him support some of his initiatives throughout the organization. So, he was kind of feeling he was getting 2 or 3 in a box by kind of cloning of Bill Campbell to help him. And Jeff Bezos, a similar thing. There was a question at a time of who needed to be the leader of Amazon, and Bill Campbell was very effective at helping him navigate that. So it was really about the trust, but it was also about his capability and his work throughout the organization. They could have him work 3, 4, 5, 6 levels down in the organization at engineering team levels, and they just felt like they could get tremendous benefit, and they didn't have to be in those rooms, and they didn't really have to know what went on in those rooms, but they knew that if he was part of that team supporting a innovation leader, a manager that could be a sales manager, whatever it might be, that he would really help them get a better result. And they were just so excited and delighted to have him participate in that way.
Awesome. That's very insightful. I think, especially with people from my generation, when we think about Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos, like, we don't think that they sought, the assistance of an actual coach, So to hear that Bill Campbell was a coach to Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos and offered them advice, and they really admired him, I think that is inspiring, like you said, when you referenced the one word to describe the book. And it's
and Tiara, to go beyond that, Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook had reached out to him on a very regular basis. Marissa Mayer, who had transitioned from Google to head up Yahoo during that transition, really counted on him prior at Google, but then later at Yahoo. So there's just a number of people. John Doerr from Kleiner Perkins, one of the big venture capitalists, one of the leading figures in helping fund and support Silicon Valley, was a prominent person that he engaged with on a regular basis.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that insight, Richard. So I'm going to get into my next question. We know what Bill Campbell was to Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos and the Googles and the Facebook that you mentioned. The next question I'll ask you is, what is the biggest lesson that you took away from the book and learning about Bill Campbell?
One of the biggest things that I really picked up from Bill Campbell was his mindset and his approach. He wasn't really an individual coach. He would work and mentor individually, but he was really a team coach. And so that if you looked at a number of people like Eric Schmidt and Page and others at Google that he worked with very closely, he worked with them, but he said they were part of a system. They were part of a team, and he needed to work with a team. It could have been the board of directors of the company. It could be the team below them or several teams down in the organization. And so he really had a way of doing that. And a lot of that was grown from him being a coach at Columbia University. He was the head football coach. He said he left because he had 6 consecutive losing seasons and he wanted to try something else out. And he navigated his way from J. Walter Thompson, Eastman Kodak, to Apple, and then to be CEO of Intuit. And so along the way, he picked up a lot of coaching to being a leader to now transforming back as a coach. And so he really worked at coaching, and coaching to him was a side-by-side person. It wasn't a mentor that was kind of arm's length. It was a side-by-side, in the office, in the conference room, in the lab, working with the people. And through that, he built a lot of techniques such as problem intelligence, getting people to think and reframe beyond just what's the problem, but are there different ways to look at the problem? And can we reframe it through some of those techniques? So he talked about the elephant in the room, which is what's the biggest problem, taking that on first. So there's a number of techniques that he had, and there's several nuggets that he picked up. Whether we got time in this book review to go through those, but I think you get a good flavor of a very dramatic personality. And one of the most defining things is that when Steve Jobs unfortunately passed away, part of his recommendation for his memorial service in Cupertino was that Bill Campbell would speak there, speak about him. He would talk about how they worked together. And people can Google up and YouTube Cupertino Memorial Bill Campbell, and you'll hear pretty heartfelt discussion of Bill Campbell about Steve Jobs, and that follows an introduction by Tim Cook, the current CEO and chairman.
Wow, Richard, that really does help to speak volumes about who Bill Campbell was and the effect that he had on other people. So thank you so much for that. So I'll get into my last question. I know that you spoke about some gems that you found in this book. Did you find yourself having to reread any of the passages?
I did. I reread any number of them. I went through a number of aspects. One is I kind of highlighted some nuggets. The second was, that I really liked about him was, so he was a mentor, so he's a coach, particularly he liked to be called a coach. Why did he operate that way? So there was a lot of techniques that he utilized, but one that was, I think, extra special of him, and it might have come from being a college head football coach, was power observation and really looking at the team, at the people, engaging with them, but stepping back from them, and really understanding, the key needs of a team, and if there's any missing links between the people. If there's 4 people on a team, or 5 or 6 or 10, are there some things that just aren't connecting? And how can he help connecting? And maybe two or three people connecting, and maybe the whole team, and maybe one person that's not engaged. And so his power of observation, of really picking apart, kind of during a game, like a football game. You can't win the game after it's completed. If the horn sounds, it's done, the whistle blows, it's too late. And so he learned from being a coach, you got to kind of observe and make calls and make changes on the fly. He was very good at that.
Awesome. Yeah, I figured because it seems like it has been such a great book, and I know that you've truly enjoyed reading, about Bill Campbell. So I wanted to know if there was any moments that you found yourself like, "Wow, this is good. I have to go back and reread this."
He's a gem. He's a hidden treasure. He's a gem. He's something that's been kept secret in Silicon Valley. More people need to read this book. It's just fun. Not that you're going to pick up 100 new things. It'll reinforce some things that you've been doing. It'll highlight them. It'll tweak some things, that are very effective. One of the nuggets I picked up is that high performers, especially high performers, are the ones that often feel alone. And so the people that he coached, he felt that loneliness, and he felt that he could fill that vacuum for them in a very special way.
Wow. Yes, that was going to lead to my wrap up question. I was going to ask you, is there any gems? Because I know you mentioned those in the beginning, but you didn't go into detail. If there was any gems that you actually like took away from this book, that you didn't mention in your biggest lesson, like was there another gem that you felt like, wow, or maybe something that you learned about Bill Campbell that you didn't know?
What's interesting from his experience, because he said, again, this is a football coach at Columbia University. Everybody says he's pretty good. The talent in getting into an Ivy League school probably hindered him being able to do what he needed to do there. But he made this thing, only coach the coachable. Interesting. You'd think he could work with everybody. He said, no, only coach the coachable. He also made a point that I really, really like for companies, hardware, software, financial services companies, whatever. Product teams are the heart of a company. They're the center point. You need products to flourish, and don't let the sales folks tell you what to do. Don't let finance tell you there's no money, you can't do this, you can't do that. Focus on what you can do as product teams. You're the center. The other part that he talked to management about, which is layoffs are a failure of management. And he imparted this on all the folks that he coached, is if you have to make a layoff, it's because you failed. It's not because they failed. It's because you haven't got the growth, you haven't got the sustainability. There's a reason you're having to do this. And if you're going to let them go, then make sure you let them go with their heads held high. There's good ways to do that. One reason it's good for them, and two, it's good for those that have come behind or staying at the company. Because if you don't let them go well, it's going to tarnish your personal reputation and that of your company.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this, Richard. This has been extremely.
Thank you.
Gonna go ahead and wrap up this recording, but until next time with our next book review, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya.